90.5. Does anybody know why this number gained prominence last year? The plastic waste crisis has won the attention of Britain's Royal Statistical Society, which has chosen 90.5%, the proportion of plastic that has never been recycled, to be its international statistic of last year. To explain the number, I wanted to watch this video.
Is it alive though? It hasn't moved yet, has it? It's not a hook, right? I mean, she can't get a hook in there.
If you could, it.
Try to. Yeah, but then we lose maybe the leverage to actually grab it right now. What is it? Oh, poor baby. I'm sorry. Careful, Mecto. Oh, Mecto, don't. No.
Sí. ¿Sí o no?
No sé. No. Yeah, could you, one of the swabs, the sterile swabs, could you like put them into the iodine and then we're just gonna try to clean it?
Yes, que es durísimo.
No, pero no es un hook para nariz.
Eso es para simpón. Es plástico.
Plástico? Is it a straw? Don't tell me it's a freaking straw. Because it looked like in Germany we have the like we have those with the black stripes. That would. It's a freaking straw up her freaking nostril.
That's plastic. There's no bow.
How many of you watched the video without flinching or waiting for it to get over? This, ladies and gentlemen, is the result of just one straw. A straw that was carelessly disposed by us. A straw that ended up in the oceans and eventually caused the pain to the turtle that you witnessed right now. Incidentally, this one straw is part of the problem that I want to solve. A 5 trillion piece problem that is plaguing us today. The problem of what you throw in the oceans. Plastic arguably was one of the most important inventions of the last century, and its impact was so profound that we couldn't go a single day without it. Hello everybody, my name is Hazekazi. I am 12 years old and I alone have a plastic debt of roughly 78 kilograms and counting. So, in case you're wondering, what is plastic debt? It is the amount of non-recycled plastic which is we humans leave behind on this planet. According to a study, for every person in India, 6 kilograms of plastic is not recycled annually. For the average American, it is, and even more astounding, 90 kilograms of plastic which is not recycled annually. Imagine in a lifetime how much plastic is left behind because of us. When we die, our bodies go back to Mother Earth. But the plastic debt is left behind as a legacy for the coming generations. Did you know that we already have more microplastics in the oceans than stars in the Milky Way? Or if we were to take all the plastic from the ocean surface and pile it up. Do you know how far a distance it would cover? Take a guess. It would be enough to stack 2-liter bottles from here to the moon and back twice. Some of the stories we hear commonly nowadays are stories of dead whales. It has happened in Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, and Spain. Whales washing up on beaches, dead or dying, their stomachs stuffed with plastic. More recently, there was the story of a pregnant sperm whale that had washed up on the beaches of Sardinia, Italy, in the last week of March. It had 22 kilograms of plastic in its stomach, along with a dead fetus. The beached mammal's remains contained fishing bags, fishing nets, garbage bags, ropes, the bag of a washing machine liquid, still unidentifiable, with brand and barcode, and other objects. The ocean is a very important source of proteins for humans, with over 40% of the world's population relying on fish as its main source of food. Speaking of which, every time I see people eating fish, I wonder, are they eating fish or plastic? Because the plastic we dispose that ends up in the oceans might have been consumed by the same fish which ends up on our plate. Talk about the vicious karmic cycle. With so much happening around us, I felt I had to do something about this. Hence, I came up with an idea of an invention that will help make the oceans a cleaner place. An ocean cleaner called Eros. Eros is an intelligent ship which sucks waste from the ocean surface and cleans it. It all started 2 years back. I had watched some documentaries and the TED Talk of Boyne Slat about how he wanted to clean the oceans. A few days later, as I came home from playing football, my mom asked me to wash my hands. And as I went to the sink to get the dirt off, I observed a whirlpool of water going down the drain. An idea came to my mind, and I smiled. I drew and created a rough model, a circular ship with saucers attached, a very futuristic design, much like the USS Enterprise from Star Trek. Come on, we all love the series, right? This was just the first draft. The propellers weren't automated and it only lasted a full 7 seconds in water before coming apart. But there it was, my Eros, my vision of changing the oceans. While guzzling down innumerable cups of hot chocolate. You know, I'm still a kid. No coffee for me. I did some exhaustive research and zeroed down on the following things I really want Eros to do. The first, to clean the current waste floating in the oceans. Second, to analyze the data from the waste which we collect. And third, to stop it at source, which is getting disposed by the ships. I also realized that a circular shape was not very efficient, and that I had to redesign my ship to be more hydrodynamic. So, I worked with scientists and designers to create a more bleeding edge model. So here's how it works. The ship is essentially a large boat powered by solar and renewable natural gas with various compartments and saucers surrounding it. The saucers float on the surface, gravitate to create a whirlpool to pull the waste towards its center, which is then sent through a tube to various chambers in the ship. Before the chambers, we have an infrared sensor, which alerts Eros for marine life. The chambers include an oil chamber, which collects waste oil. The next few chambers are for large, medium, small, and micro waste, respectively. Once the waste enters the chambers, Eros analyzes, segregates, and compacts it, and pumps the filtered water back into the oceans, all without harming marine life in the process. In the future, I see myself tackling other ocean problems, like the waste which lies at the bottom of the sea and the one on beaches. I would also like to do more research on innovative ways to recycle the waste. While I was working on Eros the ship, meeting a lot of people and youth, I have met some very motivated youngsters who have shared similar thoughts of wanting to bring a change to the problem. Keeping this in mind, I have been working and pleased to announce the launch of the Eros Foundation, dedicated to bring a generational change in the way the youth of today consumes and disposes plastic in a more sustainable manner. Here, one of the core objectives of the Eros Foundation is to align with UN SDG 12 and 14. Here at the Eros Foundation, we are focusing on education and research on the plastic waste crisis and possible solutions by children. We are also incubating and highlighting new ideas similar to Eros the ship and make a real difference. The idea is to create a more profound value that will transcend financial gain. This is just the beginning of a small hope I have that my generation is going to reverse the wave of the plastic pollution crisis through affirmative thought and critical action and restore the natural habitat of a marine world. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Mark Bendai. I'm the Bureau Chief for Reuters in Southern Europe, and I'm going to be moderating the panel today. I'll introduce them shortly, but firstly, I just wanted to say that although I'm no expert on the topic, like you, or probably like many of you, I grew up by the sea, and in my lifetime, I'm 54. From the time I started paddling in the ocean as a youngster to now, it's probably one of the most remarkable changes I've ever seen. It'll be fascinating to see from each of the panelists today exactly what's being done, both to raise awareness in terms of from the consumption end, behaviour changes, from the production side as well, what companies that are selling things in plastic are doing, and even scientists as well. So with no further ado, I'm going to invite up on stage our first panellist. She is Christina Fanucci. She's a Rome-based artist who has made her contribution to the public debate over plastic waste. Sorry. I'll just finish that introduction, sorry. Christina created the Garbage Patch State, a conceptual work of art that seeks to give an identity to the islands of plastic waste drifting in the world's oceans. Shortly, Christina will show us a video. Before she does that, I'm just going to invite the rest of the panel. Julia Valle is the Director of Public Affairs at TIPA Compostable Packaging. TIPA is a startup offering a nature-based solution to conventional flexible packaging. Previously, Julia spent 3 years at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, where she worked on the topic of circular economy with policymakers in Europe and North America. Next up is Roberta Barbieri, PepsiCo's Vice President for Global Sustainability. Roberta has over 20 years of experience in working in environmental sustainability. She's responsible for integrating sustainability into PepsiCo's core business processes and meeting its goals on climate, water stewardship, waste and sustainable packaging. I'll introduce now Giovanni Barato, a researcher at the Italian Institute of Technology. Giovanni works in the Institute's Smart Materials team, which is focusing on making 100% biodegradable plastic out of food waste. And now, Raphael Cuvillier, who is project coordinator for Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation. And Raphael is also through the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation, co-founder of the Beyond Plastic Med Association, known as BMed. It looks for alternatives to plastic and tries to develop common business strategies for tackling plastic pollution. Just to kick things off, I wondered if we could start in turn in the same order to just briefly tell us a little bit more about yourself, and in particular, kind of what makes you passionate about this particular issue. So, Christina, we're going to start with a video, right?
I can say it if you want.
Okay.
Is it on? No. Hello? Yeah. I'd like to introduce myself as the president of the second largest state in the world, the Garbage Patch State. It is a state that, for the islands, the floating islands in the ocean. If you ask me if I'm proud of being president, I'm not. I'm really ashamed of what we have done. And since 2012, I have worked to create awareness through the existence of my state. I've done many installations, and for the principle that an image is worth 1,000 words, I'll show you my video, please.
Okay. Okay, and we'll just introduce the other panelists a little bit first. So, Julia, do you want to tell us a little bit more?
Hi, thank you for having me here. My name is Julia, as opposed to what says on the slide, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm coming from TIPA compostable packaging, and as Mark alluded, I spent many years working in the field of circular economy and sustainability, and the reason I joined TIPA is because I really acknowledge the power of innovation. So if we think about the plastic pollution problem, every year we have some 30 million metric tons of flexible packaging put on the market. And this number is only expected to grow. So if we think about the role it plays, it has an important role in protecting our food, keeping it safe, hygiene, fresh, and extend shelf life. But we all know the negative externalities associated with that. And what Zika showed us is just part of it. The single-use plastic has very severe impacts on our health and our planet. And flexible packaging is even more challenging than the rigid packaging that we use, so for example, for water bottles. These materials, this plastic, the rigid plastic, can be recycled. The problem with flexible packaging that it's very rarely can be recycled. It is too lightweight, it is too complex, too multi-layered and contaminated with food. And it makes a whole range of economical, technical, regulative challenges that leads to the fact that even in developed economies such as Europe and UK, only 5% of the flexible packaging put on the market gets recycled. So what we did in TIPA is really try to rethink the problem at its core using circular economy and nature-based solutions, and trying to think the problem from the very source of it. And so after 5 years of research and development, our team has managed to come up with flexible packaging that is fully compostable. It mimics the properties of flexible conventional plastics, but without the negative externalities associated with it. It has exactly the same end of life as the food it protects. You can put it in your organic bin bag together with the scrapes from your kitchen. It can be collected and composted in home or industrial composter and safely returned to the ground. And in the last couple of years, we managed to start penetrating the market thanks to pioneering and ambitious brands such as Waitrose, Happy Pear, Pocati, and so on. And we hope to continue doing that because we think that if you think about orange or avocado peel, they're compostable. There is natural compostable solution for packaging. So why ours should be different?
Hi, everybody. My name's Roberta Barbieri. I work for PepsiCo. Part of my job at PepsiCo is to help integrate sustainability into our business worldwide. My background personally is I'm an environmental scientist and environmental engineer. It's what I trained to do. It's what I went to school to do. And I sometimes say it was what I was born to do. I have the pleasure of working at an organization like PepsiCo that gets it and gets how important it is to integrate sustainability into our business operations. We have a vision when it comes to plastic, where a world where plastic need never become waste, and we're activating multiple work streams across our entire global business to try to put that vision into reality. On a personal front, as a lifelong sustainability professional, I've been waiting my whole career for an environmental issue to grab the public consciousness in a way that plastic waste has done. It's a tremendous moment for those of us in the field and those of us who have dedicated our lives to environmental protection, because as we heard this morning, the world has woken up to this issue. So if we can't do something about it now, given the tremendous public attention, governmental attention, and personal passions of everybody in rooms like this around the world, then shame on us. This is really the moment for us to fix the plastic problem, and I think it can be fixed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Giovanni Barato. I'm a material scientist. I'm a researcher. I work in the Smart Material Group at the Italian Institute of Technology, an Italian research institute. What really makes me passionate about this issue is what drives the entire group. And what we're trying to do is come up with ways to exploit what we are discarding from the food industry, so all the food waste, and trying to transform that into biodegradable materials that can be used for packaging, for example. And going back to what Julie was saying, trying to create circular economy systems where what is currently being discarded as a waste, so the food waste, can become a source of raw materials to produce biodegradable packaging. So our idea is do we need to use a material like plastic that has a lifetime of 500 years to make disposable objects that we're going to use for a few weeks or a few hours or very short amount of time. So this is what we're doing. We've been working for several years on this. We have 5 patents on 5 different materials that we can produce. We can produce rubbery materials that are 70% vegetables. We can make, by mixing vegetables with other biodegradable polyesters, we can make thermoplastics, vegetable-based materials. We also found a way of making materials that are 100% vegetable. They perform similarly to some of the most common polymers that we can use. So this is what we're really doing, trying to come up with ways of transforming waste and trying to solve 2 problems. One, getting value from waste, and solving the plastic packaging crisis with new technologies. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. The Prince Albert of Monaco is a foundation which is fully dedicated to environmental issues. We are working on climate change and energy. We are working on biodiversity, and we are working also on water resources. We are focused on 3 areas. The first one is the polar areas, where there are a lot of plastic issues. We are focused on the Mediterranean basin, of course, because of Monaco, it's our garden. And we are working with least developed countries. 60% of our action is focused on ocean issues. And in Monaco, we have been worried for a long time about marine pollution. And that's why, under the leadership of Prince Albert of Monaco, Monaco was the first state to ban single-use plastic bags in 2016. Regarding plastics, we are working mainly on the Mediterranean because it's our garden, and also because the Mediterranean is the highest plastic concentration in the world, in the sea. Regarding marine plastic solutions, we are fully convinced that the problem is in the sea, but the solutions, the major solutions are on land. And it's very interesting to clean the sea, but we have to work on the solution on land because all the plastics come from land. In order to address this issue, the foundation launched a Beyond Plastic Made initiative. And this initiative is focused on two issues, 2 ways of action. At the local level, BMed launched a call for small initiative for civil society. And since 2015, 38 initiatives have been supported in 12 different countries around the Med. Our goal is to support very concrete action from civil society, NGOs, small communities, and we aim to create a network of civil society around the Med. And the second way of action for BMed is to work at the regional level, creating a BMed business club. Our goal is to gather business company working in around the Med and researchers, because we think it's very important for researchers and business company to share their experience, their assessments of solutions, because there are a lot of solutions. There are good solutions, and there are solutions which are less good, and it's very important to create a space where business company and researchers can work together. So that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raphael. I'm going to ask just a first question of each of the panelists, and then I'd like to stop being the journalist and let you grill the panel. So let me start off, and then please, after this round of Q&A, please jump in and put your questions. The question I'd like to put to each of you, just briefly, is who bears the major responsibility for dealing with plastic waste? Government, companies, consumers, who? Christina?
I think that the main responsibility is from companies. They should stop with the packaging that are using right now. Of course, it's not 100% their responsibilities. There should be governments who promote laws against that kind of packaging, but that should refrain from doing something which destroys our earth.
I think that the responsibility have to be shared. There is no one single actor that can solve it by themselves. I think government have really important role to play in setting the rules of the game against single-use plastics, but also pro the right materials, infrastructure, collection, and so on. And consumers as well. We have also to take responsibility for what we do. So.
Yeah, I'll second that. The way that I think about it is this is a value chain problem. And there's no one point in the value chain that bears full responsibility. The way that I would kind of articulate the pinch points of responsibility are from the chemical producers. We need their vast R&D dollars working on alternatives. For the companies that sell the materials, we need investment and support for recycling, consumer education. In the retailers, same thing, we need consumer education. And then in the consumers themselves, we need market signals. So speaking as a company, we need you as consumers to send us market signals to make a change, because that speaks louder than words. And layered on top of that, we believe at PepsiCo there is also a role to play for smart policy and governance from governments around the world.
I agree with the fact that it's a shared responsibility. Plastic does not have legs. So if a piece of plastic goes in the ocean, it's because some human discarded the environment and it ended up in the ocean. I agree that being a person working in the field, we also have responsibility to come up with new alternatives. For sure, companies that produce plastic packaging, that use plastic packaging, have a responsibility on this as well. We can together find a way of using less plastic or trying to enforce the use of biodegradable materials. And for sure, legislation will definitely help transitioning to a more sustainable society. But it's a societal issue. All parts of the society has a responsibility on this.
Of course, I think there is a need for the global approach of the value chain in order to change the practices and to find innovative solutions. But it can be done if consumers and civil society don't push it. It's the same thing for climate change. It's the same thing for all environmental issues. Companies are moving if the consumers are wanting to move. And I think also that the states have to give good signals. For example, the European Commission asked for banning plastics. It's very important to get a very high-level signal also.
Okay, thank you. Now, any questions from the audience? We've got one here. Do we have a microphone? I'll get...
Here she comes.
Is it on? Yes. Okay. Since you were talking about that it's all our responsibility to reduce plastic, and actually walking around at Seeds&Chips, I see that there's already very little plastic, but still there is some. And I was wondering, is there any way that you think Seeds&Chips could for next year maybe go zero plastic? Or like just a brainstorm idea?
Yeah, the question's, I guess, for the organisers of Seeds&Chips, but it gets back to the question of, okay, everybody's responsible, but what's the major responsibility? I mean, I went to lunch just before, and without noticing or had my head down, I was served in a plastic cup and a plastic plate. And I wanted to remove the thing from the plastic plate, but it was food on it, so it's already dirty and it's got to be thrown away now. So as a consumer, unless you're really aggressive, unless you're really on the ball, I feel trapped, even at this venue. So I don't know who wants to take that.
Well, I think we definitely have a role to play in reducing the amount of plastic we use. If it's the straws or some of the packaging, absolutely. But living a regular life, if you think about some of the herbs and the granola bars and the grains and things you buy, you're not going to go to the supermarket every day with 20 containers. And so there's need for plastic. And plastic also helps to prolong shelf life of many products and reduce food waste. So there is a role to play in it. We just need to be smart. Where it's possible, reduce. Where it's possible, recycle. Where it's not possible, use other materials.
Yeah, really well said. I was going to say something very similar. It's important to keep in mind what the problem is. Plastic itself is not the problem. We don't have a plastic problem. We have a plastic waste problem. And arguably, we have too many single-use plastic items in the world. So we need to challenge ourselves to move back to the mindset of multiple-use materials rather than single-use materials that are just take, make, use, and dispose.
Okay, one problem though, Christina, you go.
I think one has to be a hero to avoid plastic in our life. It's impossible. You go to the supermarket and you come home with a bag full of plastic. And yes, of course, it's also our responsibilities, but also those who sell the merchandise should avoid that. I mean, what can we do? I mean, we cannot spend our life fighting against the people that sell you things and stuff. And also, I think there have been enough signals to companies to, they ask stop selling plastic. What can we do more?
I mean, isn't it a bit like tobacco in a way? I'm not trying to compare the products, but in terms of, the only really effective way to deal with that, it seemed, was to get heavy with regulation and force. There was a lot of awareness campaign. I come from Australia where anti-smoking ads are ubiquitous. They're horrendous and they're in your face all the time, but it's part of a policy mix, including regulation, making cigarettes prohibitively expensive, etc. So why shouldn't governments actually, if we share responsibility, why shouldn't governments take the major responsibility to force the supply chain to adapt faster?
They can and they are. frankly. You know, in some markets like the European Union, there's a tremendous amount of regulatory activity. In my part of the world, in California, in the United States, regulatory activity. And that's a big part of the solution, which, you know, PepsiCo fully agrees with, and we're at the table helping to develop those smart policies and regulations that will help address the problem in the most cost-effective and efficient way possible.
Okay.
Definitely second that. And we always think about regulation as Western markets, but actually we see some of the more innovative and strict regulation coming from Africa and India. So Rwanda and certain regions in India are just banned single-use plastic. And there we see much more market readiness and willingness to adapt new materials and products.
Any more questions from the floor? We've got two up the back. Should we take the gentleman here on the side?
Hello. This question is more directly to Giovanni. My question is that if the R&D that you're making on bioplastic, is it on a lab scale, or are you already producing like in a big scale? If not, what you need to do to start production and work with other enterprises to reach like a point of bioplastic consumption?
As I mentioned before, we have few technologies for different materials. Two of them were picked up by an industry that is investing together with us to bring that to market. Other technologies are more on the research side. Other technology are more like waiting for someone to pick them up. Because again, we are a research institute. We are not a company. So making new research, making new patents, finding new processes to develop new materials, that's our goal. So the answer is at every stage, depending on which technology you have. Actually, we have a small place here in Pavilion 12 where we have a few of the products that were developed together with that company. So if you just want to take a quick look there. For what we need to do with technologies that we think are mature and that just need some companies to invest, we need the companies, we need the industrial partner to bring that to industrialization and to market. I hope I answered.
Thanks, Giovanni. We had another question over here with in the middle of this row here.
Hi, the question is, do you think that in the short future the biggest countries will be positive to fight plastic waste?
Did you get to the question? Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Let's say countries like USA, China will be in 2020 positive to fight against plastic waste, recycle.
Whether China and the United States will take the lead,
yes,
you
yes.
think? Gosh, I mean, Roberta, maybe from the United States, it sounds like things are happening. Yeah.
As the American on the panel, yeah, I do not pretend to speak for my administration, yeah, just from a U.S. perspective, I would say that from a consumer attention and focus on plastics, we are lagging the European Union, the United Kingdom in particular, but catching up. I don't think or expect much activity on this with the current administration, but the more consumer appetite increases, the faster things will move, is what I would say for the U.S. perspective.
Is it even, can markets like Europe, are they big enough to force a company like PepsiCo to basically re-engineer your supply chain, even if the United States is not really forcing you to, just because one big market is, you retool your whole, I mean, is that something?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Europe is a huge market for us, and I'll give you one example of how our supply chain is changing there. We made a global commitment last year to increase the amount of recycled content in all of our plastic packaging, including our PET bottles, to 25%. In Europe, we are doing that faster and more aggressively. So our European specific commitment is to get to 45% by 2025, and then 50% further along. So yeah, absolutely. And as a result, the collection of PET bottles needs to increase. The processing of captured PET bottles to make them food grade available in terms of recycled PET that processing capability needs to increase. And the governments within the EU are talking about now reducing barriers to movement of recycled PET that currently exist in trade laws, even within the EU, to facilitate that supply chain.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions in the audience? One up the back.
Hi there. As a consumer, I'm a little bit confused. Should I buy recyclable packaging and recycle, or should I buy compostable packaging and trying to compost? And if I do, I read articles where, it takes centuries for some of the compostable packaging to break down, so they can still hurt our birds and our snakes. So as a consumer, what should I do? Help me.
Yeah, I'll take that one first. I bet there's some other people that want to join in. My first answer would be, it depends on where you live. So if you live in a developed country with strong recycling collection infrastructure and infrastructure on the back end of collection to process it so that it actually is recycled and returns as recycled content in something, then recycling the material is a good opportunity for you. If you also live in an area that has access to composting, first you need to know if the packaging material is compostable in an industrial setting only, or compostable anywhere on the ground in your home composting. If it's industrial composting only, you need to know if there's an industrial composter available to you. If it's home compostable, that's an excellent alternative. You can take care of it from yourself. But the answer to your question gets a little bit complicated, and I would argue the answer is based on locally where you live and what's available to you in terms of infrastructure.
I have even more complexity to this to add. I think that it also depends on what material and product. So for example, as you mentioned, PET bottles, they can be recycled. PET is a quite simple polymer that can be recycled and then put back again into the same drinking bottle. When it comes to flexible packaging, just as these granola bars that have a lot of layered materials, they cannot be recycled. As I mentioned, that's the recycling rate, even if their collective recycling rate is 5%. And that's because there is not really, they cannot be used again for food packaging, which means that the end market is very limited, and best case scenario, it will be used in some bench or something, which is doubtfully called recycling. So I think that there is a lot of layers of complexity, but that's where we need the policymakers to come in. Because, for example, in the European Union, including the UK, there's going to be home organic collection by 2025. So everybody will have the access to put their both kitchen scrapes and compostable packaging into the bin. It's going to be collected and then industrially composted. US, other geographies, it's under development, but yeah, it depends both on the geography and the kind of products you use.
Gosh, that's a lot for a consumer to think about, right? Very, very complex. Yeah.
Can I add one thing? Yeah, sorry. The one thing I want to add is, regardless of what end-of-life solution these materials make their way to, I want to call attention to the fact that compostable packaging is an excellent greenhouse gas carbon footprint reducing thing to do. This is made from plant material, not fossil fuel petroleum-based material. So no matter what happens to it at its end of life, it's a great carbon footprint reduction material to focus on.
Okay.
Yes, just a few words. I think this discussion shows that there is still an important need for science and for science assessment, on solutions, on innovative solutions. And we have to assess which are the good solutions, which are the solutions which are not as good. And we think in our foundation that there's a lot of things to do on scientific aspect. And the other thing is that there is a very important need for information, education, especially in least developed countries. There's a lot of things to do. We don't have to forget that people have to be aware, people have to be educated on that, because it's very important.
Just on that, Giovanni, is there a magic bullet in this issue, technologically speaking?
I wish. No, I think now from a research, science, technology point of view, there are so many things people are trying to do, and new materials and new technology. Our transformation technology is one of them. But probably there is no one way to solve this problem. Probably a multitude of approaches are needed, because some materials are not technologically feasible when they are biodegradable. As of today, maybe some new materials will come up. So it's a chaotic and very creative time. I guess probably some few alternatives will emerge and will become predominant, but as of today, there is no one solution to the plastic problem.
I'm going to ask Christina, how do you wrestle with this problem every day of trying to minimize your use of plastic?
It's difficult. I mean, it's impossible. It's almost impossible to live a normal life with, I don't say no plastic because I'm not against plastic, but with no single-use plastic. It's really difficult. How can we do? I mean, it's...
Yeah, it's
really
a massive, massive problem. Any other questions? Okay, at the front. Okay, the microphone at the front row.
I have two questions. I have one question for Ms. Christina Fanucci. I'd like to know if your garbage patch state is growing, or if it's shrinking, or if it's growing faster recently, or if you have any statistics on that. And I would also like to know what does happen to flexible plastic, because I actually live in Italy, and we are very careful about segregating garbage based on the regulations that are given to us by our local district offices. And, you know, it pains me to know that just 5% of it is getting recycled. What happens to the rest? Does it get incinerated? And in this case, is this actually the best solution to handle the lightweight plastic? Is it the least polluting solution? Compared to being dumped in the sea or, you know, put in a landfill, is incineration actually the best solution, is my question.
Thank you. I'll answer to the first question, and I'll leave the second one yes, unfortunately, the border of my state are growing every day, and I'm really struggling to try to shrink it instead. I hope you can help me. I don't want to see my state anymore. It's, you know, as it has been said, maybe Giovanni has said, the problem is not on the sea, but it's on the shores. It's on land. It would be simple, I think, to take the plastic in the rivers before they go to the ocean, because when they are in the sea, they are lost. It's really, really hard to take them away. I think strength should be done on the rivers. Now I go to the second.
Thank you. I didn't get where you live, but here. I don't know about the Italian data per se, but from recent data from the UK, which I think is a similar setting. It's been 40 years of recycling efforts, and the numbers are around 4 or 5% for flexible packaging. What happens to the rest? Yeah, probably it gets incinerated or landfilled. Whether incineration is better than dumping it in the ocean? Yes, probably the answer is yes, but is it the best we can do? Probably not.
Raphael? No? Any other questions? Right at the back.
Hello. I know you have spoken about the regulations and the bans concerning some single-use plastics. I was wondering how you feel about some styrofoam bans application, the polystyrene, and where do you see it, where do you see it going? If it's going to be actually applicable, or like, are they going to be endorsing it, or like, how's the severity of it for the drafting, or for what they are claiming to happen in the future years?
Interesting, styrofoam. Okay, Raphael, are you?
I'll just give you my personal opinion. PepsiCo doesn't have any styrofoam packaging material, but styrofoam is not recyclable anywhere to my knowledge. And what makes it particularly kind of bad for the environment is that it rapidly breaks into tiny pieces that make it very difficult to collect. So I would imagine, I've been actually surprised that there haven't been more styrofoam bans ahead of the plastic bags or the straws. I think I would argue that the answer to my own question is because it performs its job better than anything else as a, dispensing heat, like Dunkin' Donuts styrofoam cups, for example, and there's no good alternative yet. So the bans on styrofoam, the effect hopefully that they will have is that they will push investment dollars into research and development on alternatives that perform just as well but are recyclable.
Interesting. Raphael? Giovanni, do you want?
That is actually, I completely agree. It's one of those materials where I was saying that there's a need for new solutions and new materials from scientists, from innovators. That's probably why there are a few starch-based alternatives. They have their pro, they have their cons, but probably there's a technological issue there that needs to be addressed.
There's a gap in the market, it seems. I've got time for maybe one last question. Let's take two then. If someone, I think I'm just being blinded by the light. Where's the next one? Blonde lady, grey shirt. Yes. Now you've got to ask it.
I have so many questions, and I really am enjoying this panel. The last thing you brought up was around investment dollars. And in looking in this industry for a long time, the innovation is taking so long. And it's slow, and it's really heartening to see PepsiCo and others really starting to commit and invest in this. But where do you see the investment dollars truly coming from, and what are they getting out of that investment?
So in addition to kind of the consumer packaged goods companies like PepsiCo that are putting a fair amount of research and development into the problem, I see investment dollars beginning to be freed up in the very beginning of the plastic value chain and the kind of chemical processing. Because you think about it, this is bans on plastic are a risk to the financial model of plastic producers, so the chemical industry. So they get that, and they're leaning in to that investment opportunity. From PepsiCo's standpoint, we are another interesting thing that we're seeing in this plastic waste crisis is a tremendous amount of collaboration. So PepsiCo is sitting with Coca-Cola and Nestle and Danone, basically arch competitors, and joining our investment dollars to help scale materials that we already have in place. For example, PepsiCo has a similar product to Julia's industrial compostable flexible film for our potato chip bags that we're piloting in Chile, India, and the United States. And we're talking to our peers and competitors about helping, we'll share that technology, help us scale it. So those are some of the kind of interesting different avenues where investment is being brought into this area.
Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay, well, just last one. I'm getting the wind up, so we've got time for one more question. Just here then.
Hello. Okay. So you mentioned putting the pressure sort of on consumers to move the needle with larger companies in terms of pressuring them to change things like formulation and packaging, so what's happening at the retail shelf. That's just a very slow process. I've seen it over and over again, in especially the CPG space. What will it take businesses to actually move faster without having the impact at the shelf drive the business decisions, especially in light of the fact that consumer education isn't at the forefront of what's happening, and so without having educated consumers, they're not necessarily going to be a good driver of business decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's the conundrum that we deal with every day in my field, living in the corporate world. I probably won't answer it well, but I'll give it a shot. We need, there's a couple of interesting experiments going on in different parts of the world. One in Paris right now, a company called by the name of TerraCycle has what they call the Loop Project, which is reusable packaging for consumer products like our Quaker granola that we sell in Europe, our Tropicana orange juice. It comes to the consumer via e-commerce, so it's delivered to them as part of a package of other consumer products that they need every day, like shampoo and whatnot, pet food, in reusable containers. They use it, they put it back in the shipping container. Once all of them are empty and full, it goes back to TerraCycle. They clean the material for us, send it back to our production location. We put more granola in it, and it goes out again. That's back in the days, speaking as from an American reference, the milkman model, where he delivered milk to your doorstep in glass bottles. Very similar model, just using e-commerce. We need that to take off. We need that to be sold out, because that's the signal to us. Consumers are going to buy into this. So then we can go and buy into it with our marketing teams and with our sales dollars. So just one example of how you can vote with your wallet to help drive that change.
Yeah, I think that having consumers buying the products is really important for many of the models, including ours. What is going to really help us as well is the infrastructure and the regulation that actually plastic, organic food is going to be collected from homes, and that once a material is certified to be compostable, and that requires a European-wide standard that is going to be adopted by the European Union, then it can be disposed along with your organic waste, if it's chicken bones or avocado or whatnot, and then take it and to be processed and then put back into the soil. So we need this system to be set up, and we have proof of concept, but we need now that to scale.
Okay. I think we're done. Thank you very much for all those questions, and a round of applause for all the panelists, please.